There is a reason Machiavelli never wrote a chapter on apologies, because he knew one truth. The moment you explain yourself, you kneel, and once you're kneeling, the game is already lost. The lion cannot explain to the sheep why it kills. That's what Machiavelli would say, not because it's cruel, but because it's necessary. Power is not built through understanding. It is built through distance, perception, and silence. To apologize is to confess weakness. To explain is to surrender control. The world does not reward goodness. It rewards leverage. You were taught to be kind, to clarify your intentions, to make people feel comfortable, and it cost you everything. So now no more. This is your reset. No apologies, no explanations, just strategy, just fire. This is Machiavelli's savage code. And from this moment forward, you play to win. They don't ask for your apology because they want healing. They ask because they want you small, bent on your knees. That's what apology really is in the eyes of power. Posture, not virtue, not maturity, not empathy. Posture, and once you're kneeling, the game has already been lost. Machiavelli would say, you've surrendered more than your words. You've surrendered your myth. In the theater of power, perception is reality, and when you confess even to a crime you never committed, you're no longer feared. You're accessible, predictable, weak. They don't want resolution. They want ritual humiliation. The apology isn't the end of the trial. It's the proof that you still recognize their authority, and when you do that, you've just handed them your sword. Understand this. Apology is not always about repair. It's about dominance. The demand for an apology is the demand to submit to someone else's moral framework. And that framework was built to control you. It's a stage set with velvet curtains and execution ropes. Machiavelli never wrote about apologies because he didn't believe in them. Not in public, not in power, not when perception is the battlefield. He believed in silence. Because silence does not kneel. Let them call it arrogance. Let them call it cold. The lion never explains why it didn't spare the lamb. That's not cruelty. That's Nature been trained to seek forgiveness like it's survival, to rush into explanations, to soften your sharp edges. You were taught that saying sorry made you strong. But Machiavelli would never call that strength. He would call it a strategy leak, a break in the armor, a signal to the pack that the leader is uncertain. You think your words will fix the distortion, but here's the truth. Words don't clean blood off the blade. They just distract the victim in the shadow games of power. Truth is not the lever. Silence is. It keeps them guessing. It denies them closure. It creates a vacuum they will fill with fear, respect, or confusion, all of which are more useful to you than sympathy. Apology is currency, and if you spend it cheaply, you bankrupt your influence. There is a cost to every confession, not in emotion, but in optics. Power doesn't beg to be seen as good. It demands to be seen as unshakable. And so here's your first law. When the wolves come for you, do not explain your howled. Do not apologize for the boundary you drew. Do not explain the silence you chose. Do not justify the fire you lit to protect your throne, because the moment you kneel out of guilt or fear or people-pleasing reflex, you've told the room exactly where to aim next time. Let the accusations fly. Let them twist the story. Let them scream into their echo chambers. But you say nothing, because silence isn't cowardice. Silence is cold fire. It burns slower, but it consumes everything. Machiavelli believed that the strongest move was not defense. It was detachment. Not because he lacked empathy, But because he understood its price, you want to be noble. You want them to know you meant no harm. But nobility is a poor weapon in a kingdom built on optics and leverage. Never defend when the attack isn't physical. Never explain when the truth won't be heard. Never kneel just to keep the peace. Because the moment you do, you've placed your crown on someone else's head and they will wear it gladly. Oh, here is your correction, your reset, when they demand your apology. Ask, who profits from my submission? When they ask for your explanation, wonder, what power am I trading for peace? And when they call your silence cruel, remind yourself, apology is the language of the weak, silence is the dialect of kings. Let this be the first rule burned into your skin. Power never kneels, and when it does, it never rises again. They told you to be authentic, to show your soul, to be transparent, vulnerable, real. But here's the truth Machiavelli saw centuries ago: the more of yourself you reveal, the easier it becomes to destroy you. In a world that worships exposure, concealment becomes power, and yet you've been led to believe that hiding is weakness, that the mask is a lie, that to protect your image is somehow a betrayal of your true self. But Machiavelli wrote that a prince must appear virtuous, even if he is. Not to deceive, but to survive, because what they see is all that matters, and what they don't see can't be used against you. You think honesty is power, but in the court of perception, honesty is often ammunition handed to your enemies. The more they know about your thoughts, your doubts, your fears, your wounds, the more they can aim for. The softest part of you, you are not being praised for being real. You're being stripped of your armor. Understand this. Authenticity has become a trap, a demand for self-exposure disguised as moral enlightenment. But when the mob asks for your story, they don't want to understand you. They want to own you. What you think is connection is surveillance. What you call honesty, they call data. And once you are predictable, you are manageable. Once you are understood, you are disarmed. Machiavelli knew this. He never asked to be understood, only to be obeyed. The power was never in the truth. It was in the performance. The mask was the message. You are not obligated to show your entire face to a world trained to exploit your reflection. Your thoughts are not public property. Your pain is not a currency to be traded for temporary approval. Your past does not owe anyone an explanation. Royalty wears a mask not to deceive, but to rule. The mask is not a lie. It is a filter, a shield, a sculpted version of self, projected with precision, designed to command and protect. There is no honor in emotional nakedness. There is only exposure, and exposure is a liability. Control what they see. Curate your image with silence and intention. Show only enough to create an outline, never the full shape. Because the more they know, the more they aim, and the more they aim, the more likely they are to hit. Let them call you distant. Let them accuse you of being cold. You are not cold. You are contained. They say the eyes are the window to the soul, but you are not a window. You are a fortress, a cathedral of strategy wrapped in mystery. This is not about deception. This is about discipline. A refusal to hand over your blueprint to people who will only redraw it for their convenience. Your identity is not up for public edit. Your power is not something they get to co-authordo. Machiavelli. Privacy was not isolation, it was leverage, a weapon of selective revelation. Speak when it serves you, reveal when it builds power. Show just enough to earn respect, never enough to invite dissection. This is your law. Be known only through results. Be defined by the impact of your decisions, not the contents of your heart. You owe them outcomes, not explanations, and when they beg to understand you, when they claw at your mask, demanding access to your inner world, pause and let them wonder. Uncertainty is the sharpest weapon in your arsenal. Mystery is the shadow you cast when you've risen beyond interpretation. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with answers, it's the one who can't be read. So stop bleeding your story into hands that were never meant to hold it. Stop translating your soul for an audience that only wants sound bites. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be untouchable. Machiavelli would say, what they cannot define, they cannot defy. From this moment forward, your image is not a reflection. It is a weapon, it is armor, it is command. Let them speculate. Let them assume. Let them be wrong. Because in the game of power, it's not what you are that matters. It's what they believe you are, and the mask is always sharper than the truth. They say loyalty is everything, that you must stand by your people, that real strength lies in commitment, in sacrifice, in sticking around even when it hurts. But Machiavelli would stare coldly at that sentiment and whisper, loyalty is a tool, nothing more. You were taught that loyalty is a virtue, but in the architecture of power, it's a currency, and currencies lose value fast. You give everything to friends, to companies, to causes, and yet, when your usefulness runs out, so does their love. Your loyalty was never reciprocated. It was leveraged. You bleed for teams that would replace you tomorrow. You defend families that would shame you in private. You work overtime for titles that vanish. With a single budget cut, you confuse emotional effort for strategic investment, and now you're bankrupt, not in money, but in time, in energy, in silence, spent in service of people who were only allies when it suited them. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He understood that love was optional. Control was not loyalty. To him, was a matter of calculation, not morality. A prince did not trust blindly. He observed, he evaluated, he tested. He forged alliances the way a blacksmith tempers steel, hot, careful, and ready to break it when it dulls. I've been taught to stay, even when it's no longer wise, even when the room has turned against you, even when the loyalty you give becomes a leash. But here's the truth. Loyalty without leverage is slavery. It makes you predictable. It makes you exploitable. It makes you expendable. And still, you cling to it. Why? Because you fear isolation. You fear being seen as disloyal, selfish, cold. You fear the silence that comes with walking alone. But to Machiavelli, that fear was weakness. He would say, better to be feared alone than loved and owned. This is your awakening. Every ally you have is conditional. Their love is conditional. Their support is conditional. Their loyalty ends where your usefulness ends. Think of it. The friend who disappears when you stop being convenient. The boss who praises you until you say no. The partner who grows cold the moment you choose your dream over their comfort. These are not betrayals. They are reminders. You were never truly loved, only needed. And once that need disappears, so do they. This is not bitterness. This is vision. The mature strategist does not seek eternal loyalty. He builds temporary alliances around shared goals, clear terms, and exit strategies, because power is not built on emotional contracts. It's built on leverage, on positioning, on the knowledge that people are loyal not to you, but to the benefit you represent. Oh, what do? You don't become heartless, you become calculated. You don't isolate, you orchestrate, you build alliances, but you hold the blade behind your back. You listen carefully, but never show your full hand. You help others, but always ensure your power grows in return. Machiavelli never wrote about lifelong bonds. He wrote about mutual advantage, about how to ensure you are never the weaker link if they abandon you. The game continues. If they betray you, you were ready. If they shift their loyalty, your next move was already mapped. This is not paranoia. This is preparedness. Detach, not to become cold, but to become sharp. Detach, not to escape connection, but to master it. Never again pour loyalty into black holes. Never again beg for loyalty from those who only pretend to care. From now on, you move as one who understands the nature of the arena. Allies are temporary, power is permanent, and power real. Power does not cry when someone walks away. It replaces, it recalibrates, it refocuses. So, when they leave, don't chase. When they switch sides, don't plead. When they turn cold, don't warm them. Remember who you are without them, and more importantly, remember what you built despite them. Let them call you distant. Let them say you changed. Let them whisper that you've become calculating, because you have. Machiavelli would nod in approval and say, the prince who survives is not the most loyal, but the most prepared to stand alone. This is your new law. Form alliances, but never form dependency. Respect bonds, but hold the exit. Build empires, not friendships. That can destroy them. Loyalty ends where your usefulness ends. Remember that. They want you to speak, to explain, to rush into the fire of their judgment and beg for understanding. And every time you do, you confirm exactly what they need to believe, that you see yourself as guilty. To defend yourself is to accept the role of the accused. To explain is to kneel in the courtroom of perception. And perception, once surrendered, is rarely returned. Machiavelli would never have defended his name. He understood that silence was often louder than action, that the one who speaks first loses the upper hand, that truth is not pure, it is weaponized, and if it does not serve power, it is discarded. You believe clarity will save you, that if they only knew your intent, they would forgive, but forgiveness is rarely the goal. Dominance is, and the more you speak, the more you bleed. Let them misunderstand you. Let them twist your actions, distort your name, build stories out of silence. You don't owe them clarity, you owe them results. This is the war on over-explaining, the quiet revolution of restraint. Your refusal to justify becomes a mirror, a void they can't fill, a presence they can't read, and in that ambiguity, they start to doubt themselves. When people attack, they expect resistance. When none comes, they begin to unravel. The storm was supposed to meet thunder. Instead, it meets a wall of shadow. This is not cruelty. This is strategy. You are not retreating. You are repositioning. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must master appearances, not become the truth, but control what truth looks like. Never defend, just appear untouchable. Let them speak. Let them scream. Let them drown in their assumptions, because your silence is not weakness. It is tactical invisibility. The eye cannot strike what it cannot see, and the mind cannot destroy what it cannot define. Your reputation is not preserved through arguments. It is forged in fire and cooled in silence. Each word you withhold sharpens your myth. Each step you do not take becomes the echo they chase. So, the next time they demand an explanation, remember, You are not here to be understood, you are here to be obeyed. They told you to be good, to play fair, to keep your heart open and your hands clean. But Machiavelli would ask only one question: and did that goodness protect you? Because goodness without power is just vulnerability in a polished frame, and in the theater of strategy, virtue is the costume they hand to the actor destined to die. First, this is the pivot, the turning point where you stop asking what's right and start asking what works. Machiavelli's code was not immoral, it was amoral. He did not hate goodness, he simply refused to kneel before it. To him, morality was a weaponized illusion, a script written by the powerful to control the obedient empathy. Beautiful, but manipulated guilt. Useful for those who know how to aim it. Your sense of duty has been extracted, twisted, and repurposed to serve others. Not youth, more noble you tried to be. The more they fed, the more good you gave, the more control you lost. You played by the rules that were never made to protect you. Machiavelli would say, if being good means losing, then good is no longer good, because power does not care about your intentions, it only responds to outcomes. And so, we replace the illusion of virtue with the weapon of vodka, not kindness, but cunning, not obedience, but adaptability, not purity, but relentless effectiveness. Vert is the fire inside the strategist. It's the storm behind the mask. It is not about being feared or loved. It's about being untouchably who've been trained to hesitate, to second guess, to act only when it feels right. But now, you act when it makes impact. This shift is not emotional, it's tactical. From guilt to governance, from victimhood to velocity, from morality to mastery. The ones who win are not the ones who cry unfair. They are the ones who learn the rules, rewrite them in silence, and enforce them in fire. So no, you're not becoming cruel, you're becoming clear. You're not abandoning virtue, you're exchanging it for something that actually holds under pressure. The new law is simple. Do not be good, be effective. Not every insult requires an answer. Not every attack deserves a war. Sometimes the most lethal move is not to strike back, but to step away so cleanly they never know where the blade was hidden. You've been conditioned to respond, to react to, engage in every confrontation as if silence means surrender. But to Machiavelli, this was never courage. It was wasted fire. He wrote that a ruler must only fight when the victory is assured, and when withdrawal would cost more than bloodshed. Yet most people bleed for battles that mean nothing. Fights over ego, fights over perception, fights over the illusion of justice in arenas where justice never lived. You throw your soul into every disagreement. Every insult becomes a storm. Every misinterpretation becomes a trial, but all it's doing is feeding those who thrive off your reaction. They don't want resolution. They want your energy, and you keep giving it. To them, you're not proving strength, you're proving accessibility. And accessible power is no longer feared, it's consumed. Machiavelli believed silence was often louder than retaliation because silence makes people uncomfortable. They don't know where you stand. They don't know if you're wounded or planning something far worse. And in that unknown, they begin to unravel. You think walking away is weakness, but kings do not shout, they disappear. Attraction is not surrender. It is reallocation of time, of mind, of power. The strategist knows which hill is worth dying on, and more importantly, which one isn't. When you retract, you preserve your unpredictability. You maintain the mystery, and mystery is leverage. Let them speak. Let them spiral. Let them claw your silence. They want you loud, because loud is readable. Loud is reachable. But when you retreat into the shadows, you become dangerous. They don't know if you've given up or ascended. They don't know if you're done or preparing. That psychological edge is everything to the Machiavellian mind. Reaction is a cost, and the wise spend nothing on what brings no return. Retract, not out of fear, but out of focus. Withdraw, not to escape, but to rise. There is more power in the man who walks away from a battle than in the one who fights out of insecurity. Let them call you a coward. Let them mistake your silence for retreat. Let them throw stones at a shadow they can't reach. You do not need to correct them. You do not need to be seen, because visibility is not always victory. Sometimes true dominance exists only in absence, the kind of absence that unsettles every room you leave behind. So the next time they bait you, remember this: he who walks away in silence owns the room. You've spent too much time explaining why you started, why you failed, why your choices offended the delicate fabric of other people's expectations. But here's what Machiavelli would say: cold, clear, surgical. Win first, justify never. Because power doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't knock, it enters, it executes. And when the room is silent, when the dust settles, when the opposition is gone, then the story is written. Not before. Machiavelli never asked for permission. He understood that results rewrite the rules. Victory, not virtue, is what history records. Outcomes over optics, silence over speeches, because words are soft currency. Only action converts. Yet here you are, trapped in an endless debt of explanation, justifying your ambition, clarifying your boundaries, apologizing for wanting more. You are not building power. You are asking for approval. This is the final infection. The need to be understood. But those who demand your explanation don't want to understand. They want to contain, to shape your fire into something polite, predictable, digestible, and in explaining yourself, you shrink. Every justification is a rope around your strategy. Every explanation is a confession of insecurity, of doubt, of unfinished conviction. You don't need more clarity. You need more precision. You don't need to explain the storm. You need to become it. Machiavelli believed execution is the ultimate erasure of opposition. Win, and the noise vanishes. Lose, and you'll be explaining forever. The prince does not ask if the campaign offends his enemies. He does not pause to confirm if the path forward is comfortable to the court. He moves swiftly, silently, decisively, and the justification appears only after the victory is undeniable. Power is not in the plan, it is in the strike. Your dreams do not need permission. Your goals do not require public understanding. They require blood focus and quiet, ruthless execution. From now on, you do not announce your moves. You do not explain your delays. You do not rationalize your focus. You move. And when they ask why, you say nothing, because the result will speak louder than your defense ever could. It will shift their tone. It will rewrite their doubts. It will silence every question. Let them doubt your methods. Let them mock your silence. Let them underestimate the lack of noise, because by the time they see what you built, it will be too late for them to catch up. That is the Machiavellian way, not to beg for belief, but to force recognition through conquest. This is the final shift, from validation to vision, from audience to authority, from narrative to reality, so burn the need to be understood. Withdraw your explanations like arrows from a battlefield, and commit to the only thing that matters when the war is over: victory, because no one argues with a result that changed the room, and no one forgets the one who delivered it. Without ever needing to explain, Machiavelli wrote it best: history honors victors, not explanations. Now you know the code. No apologies, no explanations, no emotional debts. From this moment forward, you move differently. You do not justify. You do not clarify. You win silently. They will ask where you went, why you changed, why you're no longer soft, no longer available for their games. Don't answer. Let them wonder, because power doesn't knock. It appears, fully formed. Without excuse. You are not cruel. You are calculated. You are not cold. You are controlled. You are not lost. You are no longer explainable. This is your silence. This is your edge. Let them talk. You've already moved. You don't need to be understood. You need to be untouchable, Machiavelli would say. Now they know not to cross you, and that is enough.